On Wall Street, the herd almost always thunders in one direction, but every once in a while, a few voices dare to shout the other way. Today, we are diving deep into the story of one of the most famous of them all, Tom Lee. People love to call him a permeable, someone who's always optimistic about the market, even when things look incredibly gloomy. But what really truly sets him apart is that he backs up every single one of his bold calls with just mountains of data.
I want you to just think back to that feeling in March 2020. The whole world was shutting down, markets were in an absolute freefall, and fear was pretty much the only thing anyone was talking about. Well, right in that moment of what we call maximum pessimism, Tom Lee goes on TV, looks into the camera, and tells investors to buy. That one call, which turned out to be spectacularly correct, really came to define his entire career. So the question is, how did he develop this unique, data-driven vision? Well, let's find out.
So in this explainer, we're going to walk through 5 key chapters of his journey. We'll kick things off with his origins in the making of a maverick, then see how he really forged his reputation as the contrarian of Wall Street. After that, we'll look at his pioneering big bets, explore his mission to democratize research, and we'll finish up with his most audacious move yet, the great Ethereum bet.
Every great story has a beginning, right? And for Tom Lee, it starts a long way from the trading floors of New York, but it's deeply rooted in a powerful work ethic and a world-class education.
Tom Lee wasn't born into Wall Street royalty. He was born in Michigan to a Korean-American family. His dad was a psychiatrist, and his mom actually ran a Subway franchise. That kind of humble, hardworking background propelled him all the way to the Wharton School of Business, one of the best on the planet. He cut his teeth at firms like Kidder, Peabody, and Solomon Smith Barney before he landed this absolutely pivotal role at J.P. Morgan in 1999. That really set the stage for his rise to the top, and then, in 2014, he took the ultimate leap of faith. He went and started his own firm.
Now, it was at J.P. Morgan that Lee really transformed from just another talented analyst into one of the most influential strategists on the street, becoming known for his fierce independence and, of course, his bullish conviction.
For more than a decade, Lee was J.P. Morgan's chief U.S. equity strategist. I mean, just think about the sheer turmoil he had to navigate. The dot-com bubble bursting, the 2008 global financial crisis. And through all that chaos, he was consistently ranked as a top analyst by Institutional Investor magazine, which is a huge deal. It was during this time that he earned the nickname Wall Street's Uber Bull, because he had this uncanny ability to see a massive opportunity when everyone else just saw a crisis.
Okay, so picture this. It's 2002. Lee publishes a research report that questions the finances of a big company at the time called Nextel. The stock just tanks, and the company comes out and publicly attacks him. This was a super high-pressure, career-on-the-line kind of moment. A lot of other analysts might have just buckled.
But Tom Lee, he didn't. He stood by his numbers, absolutely refusing to retract his data-driven conclusions. An investigation later cleared him completely. And the whole episode, which was big enough to make headlines in the Wall Street Journal, cemented his core principle for life. Analysis must always triumph over bias, whether that bias is coming from a powerful corporation or from the market itself.
This whole experience helped him develop a really clear playbook. First, every single call has to be evidence-based, no gut feelings. Second, he actively looks for what Wall Street calls variant perceptions, which is just a fancy way of saying he looks for spots where the crowd is dead wrong. Third, he combines the big-picture macro trends with deep dives into individual stocks. And finally, at his core, he maintains this fundamental long-term optimism in innovation. This is the philosophy he packed up and took with him when he co-founded his own independent firm, Fundstrat.
Okay, so armed with this playbook, Lee went on to make some of the most high-profile and, frankly, prescient calls of the last couple of decades. These are the predictions that made him a household name.
Yeah, we already mentioned it, but it really bears repeating. As the world was panicking in March 2020, Tom Lee's data was telling him the sell-off was way overdone. While everyone else was fixated on lockdowns, his playbook probably had him focused on the unprecedented scale of government stimulus and the underlying strength of so many companies. He told investors to buy, predicting a sharp V-shaped recovery. He was dead right, and that legendary call landed him right on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
But his contrarian bets weren't just in the stock market. Lee was one of the very first mainstream Wall Street analysts to take cryptocurrency seriously. I'm talking way back in 2017, when most of his peers were just laughing at Bitcoin. He published this detailed report framing it as digital gold, arguing that it could one day compete with the traditional safe haven asset.
And he didn't just analyze it, he put a number on it. With Bitcoin trading under $3,000, Lee set a seemingly outrageous price target of $20,000. I mean, it sounded completely absurd at the time.
But later that year, Bitcoin blew right past that target, cementing his status not just as a contrarian, but as a true crypto pioneer.
So Lee's vision actually extended way beyond just making big calls for his big clients. He saw this fundamental imbalance in the financial system, and he set out to level the playing field for the everyday investor.
And he did this by creating two very distinct entities. Fundstrat, his original firm, that continues to serve the big institutional players, the hedge funds and family offices, but then he also launched FS Insight, a platform with a really clear mission to break down Wall Street's walls and give individual investors like you and me access to the exact same high-caliber research that was previously reserved for the world's largest funds.
When he took it a step further, he actually packaged his ideas into products that everyone could access. And that brings us to the Granny Shots ETF series. The name is just a fantastic nod to the basketball legend Rick Barry, whose underhand free throw, it looked really weird, but it was astonishingly effective. And that's the whole idea here, an unconventional, theme-driven approach that is designed to consistently win.
The series has three main funds. You've got GRNJ, which focuses on large-cap companies that are riding these powerful macro themes. Then there's GRNJ, which hunts for the next generation of leaders in the small and mid-cap space. And finally, GRNI, which offers a blend of that thematic growth with an income component, maybe for more conservative investors.
So did it work? Well, the numbers are just staggering. The flagship ETF, GRNY, absolutely exploded in popularity, gathering over $3.6 billion in assets in its first year alone. At one point, it was outperforming the S&P 500 by over 11 percentage points. Turns out, the Granny Shot was hitting nothing but net.
But Tom Lee wasn't done. Oh no. For his next act, he embarked on what might be his most ambitious and contrarian project yet, steering a publicly traded company to become a massive holder of cryptocurrency.
After being so incredibly right on Bitcoin, the natural question is, what does he see as the next big frontier? Well, for Tom Lee, the answer might just be the world's second largest cryptocurrency, Ethereum.
In June 2025, Lee became the chairman of a company called Bitmine Immersion Technologies, and he came in with an absolutely audacious goal: pivot the company into an Ethereum treasury and accumulate 5% of the entire circulating supply of Ethereum. This is a massive, massive bet.
The strategy is actually brilliant in its simplicity. Bitmine is designed to act as a publicly traded proxy for Ethereum. It gives traditional investors a way to bet on ETH without having to go out and buy it directly. They even stake their holdings to generate yield. And by late 2025, this strategy had already made Bitmine the world's second largest public crypto treasury, holding over $13 billion worth of Ethereum.
And that right there is the real takeaway from this whole journey. Tom Lee has evolved from an analyst who just predicts the future to an architect who's actively out there building it. From his contrarian reports to his innovative ETFs to pioneering this corporate crypto treasury, his entire career is a masterclass in data-driven conviction.
Which brings us to the final question. With Bitmine, Tom Lee is betting an entire company's future on Ethereum. Is he once again seeing the next frontier of finance years before anybody else? Or has the legendary contrarian finally made a bet that's just too big? I guess only time will tell.